Hi everyone, welcome back to Your Big Career Move. Thanks again for joining me today. And I just have a little request before we get into the interview today. If you are listening to this podcast, it's a relatively new podcast. So if you do enjoy it, I would be so grateful if you could subscribe and like. And if you think the content would be of interest to somebody that you know, please do share it with them. I would be eternally grateful. And with that little pitch over, let's get into the interview. Today, I'm really excited to be speaking to Sarah Veal, who has a fascinating story to tell. So thank you so much for being here today, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Thanks for taking the time out on this beautiful spring day where it's raining one second and sunny the next, keeping us on our toes. Would it be okay if we start talking about what you were doing in your career before you made a change?
Yeah, so I have been working, I've had a number of different jobs over the years. I've been working for quite a good few of them. And I was most recently working in giftware wholesale in sales. Most of my career has been in a sales role of some version of variety. And yeah, I've been involved with the giftware industry, selling to a variety of different customers, garden centre groups, John Lewis, small independent stores. And yeah, it's been quite an interesting industry to get involved in.
How did you even get into that in the first place?
Yeah, long story, I won't bore you with it, but it was purely by chance. Yeah, I was approached in a cafe, oddly, about somebody who needed somebody to fill some mat leave for them, and asked me if I'd be interested. And to be honest, it's quite a nice one because, you know, some of the product that I've sold is essentially what my demographic of female tends to buy a lot of gift for the home, you know, cushions, bags, scarves, that sort of thing. So it was quite, yeah, it was quite a nice industry to be in. So not too awful. Yeah,
is that one of the perks of the jobs that you get?
It was, yeah, it was one of the perks. Yeah, lots of samples, lots of bits, and people used to come to me for sort of Christmas present ideas. But yeah, that aspect of it was actually really nice.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how long did you do that for?
I think about 7 or 8 years all in. I worked for 3 different suppliers ultimately. I worked for a homeware sort of supplier, and then I moved to children's giftware and gardening gifts as well, and then most recently for a paper party supplier, do a lot of homeware. So yeah, it's a very not incestuous, but it's one of those industries where everybody knows everybody else, and there's a lot of trade shows, so you get to know the customers are the same. And in fact, that was part of the joy of it, that when I did move around within that sector, you could take your customer with you almost, or at least go back to them with the new product range that you were selling. So I had some really lovely customers. They're a really nice customer base, actually.
How nice to be able to build that relationship.
Yeah.
And continue that.
Yeah, move it around.
And so it sounds like you were in a career that you were actually quite enjoying. So what led to your big career change?
Well, it does sound like that. You're absolutely right. And I did. Many years ago, I worked in education, and it was a really fulfilling job. I really liked it. I wasn't a teacher, but I've worked in colleges, more than one, and in a support role, working essentially around the subject of employability for students. And it was great. I loved it. It was a really, really fulfilling job. I had 2 teenage children of my own at the time, so there was a lot of sort of commonality and common ground, but moved into sort of the commercial world. I guess in sort of recent, probably in the sort of latter part of my career with gift, I was starting to feel like I was falling out of love with it to some degree. And I guess that sort of manifested itself in terms of me waking up in the morning and not filled with dread per se, but certainly not joy for what the day was going to bring me. And I was kind of feeling really sort of lackluster about the sector, I suppose, and yeah, started to think, well, maybe this isn't so much for me, or maybe I've done all I can here, really.
And so, you know, there'll be lots of people, I think, listening to this going, yeah, that's exactly how I feel right now. Getting up in the morning is a struggle. And I always say that's one of the surefire signs that actually it's time for a little change. So tell us what you did about this niggly feeling that you...
Sure. So I think you're right. It's a big sign that things aren't well. And I think also for me, this is a bit of a cliche, but I was feeling, having worked, doing quite a fulfilling job many years before, that I wanted to do something more meaningful with a real purpose, you know, and it is a bit of a cliche. A friend that I used to work with in Gift used to say to me, we're selling tomorrow's landfill, which is a sad indictment really of the gift industry. But when you think about it, it's actually probably very true. The catalyst for me was that I went on a nice holiday with my family. We had some real quality time. You know, I had the people around me that I love, and I was so grateful for it. I was so grateful for that time that we spent together. And it got me, I don't want to sound, you know, sort of morbid, but it got me started to think about the brevity of our time on the planet and really how I wanted to spend mine. And, you know, I think for me, that was the light bulb moment. I came back from that holiday thinking, actually, I want to do something, I don't want to say that makes a difference, but it's me that I have to look at in the mirror every morning when I do drag myself out of bed. And I just wanted to feel that I had some more meaning to what I did every day. And I guess that's, you know, where it took me. And that's why I suddenly thought, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore.
Okay, so you decided that you were going to make the change, and then what did you do to actually make it happen?
Well, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. That was the problem. I knew that I wanted some fulfillment in terms of a purpose in the job. And I didn't go about it perhaps in the best way. I was very sort of focused when I came back from that holiday in terms of what I didn't want to do. And so I resigned from my job with nothing else to go to. I've not really had any real dream career goals ever in my life. I mean, when I was 15, I did, but I just wanted to start to feel good about what I was doing and feel proud of what I was doing. But I didn't really know what it would take to get me to feel that way about something. And it was really scary because I knew what I didn't want to do. I really didn't want to make a bad decision. You know, I just wanted to find something. So it was quite a scary time. But I do think that trusting your instincts is probably the best thing that you can do. And everything was telling me that I didn't want to do what I was doing. I just didn't know what it was that I wanted to do. But knowing or feeling when something isn't right for you, I think is key. My husband uses this phrase. He says, because it was quite a sort of a scary time, and he says everything will be all right in the end, and if it's not all right, it's not the end, which is, you know, is quite an interesting take on it. He's an eternal optimist, but it was actually quite valid to the way I was feeling. I was thinking, yeah, actually, you know what, I think I just need to hold out here really and see what happens. And that's kind of where it took me. It was a bit like a lemming jumping off a cliff, but I couldn't continue to do it with my hand on my heart and wake up and feel joyful about the day. I was feeling, you know, I just didn't want to do it. I've never, fortunately, experienced any real sort of depression in my life, but I could almost feel sort of a negative and a kind of a negative feeling washing over me almost. And every day that I got myself out of bed, I was kind of thinking, I just don't want to do this. I was resentful. I think I was resentful of having to do it. So yeah, I had to do something, and, you know, just chucking yourself at it seemed to be the thing to do at the time.
So did you resign and then decide what you were going to do, or how
I didn't know what to do, to be honest. And I started to look at opportunities. I think, I mean, if I could turn back time and do things differently, I think I would plan. I think I would plan better. And even if I had a temporary plan in place, I mean, I was lucky because I did have a bit of a financial buffer. And when you're all of a sudden you're not getting a monthly salary, it is quite scary. But I think I could have made a short-term plan, preferably a job, a short-term job to bring in some income, while I was thinking about what it was that I wanted to do. But I did a lot of panic. No, I didn't panic, actually. I think I probably had about a week off, and sort of got my head around it. And then I just spent quite a lot of time looking at what opportunities were available, what was out there, thinking about jobs that I wanted to do. I wrote a list of things that I wanted from a job, which was really helpful. Ideally, what do you want, Sarah? I asked myself, and made a lovely list. And there were some interesting things on there. It was obviously, an ideal list, as opposed to this is not reality. The 100k salary isn't going to come with doing people's gardens. It might have, I don't know. But yeah, it might. Yeah, but I kind of made some sort of some ideas I put onto paper, and I made myself some lists. And when I was looking at opportunities, I've really sort of focused on my list of things that I wanted, and equally things that I didn't want, and I knew what I didn't want to do. And that was the extent of my planning after I'd leapt off the cliff. Unfortunately, sort of the path it wasn't quite as laid out for me as that, and it was quite an interesting route that I was taking. And I think this podcast is really about a dream career, and I wasn't really sure what that dream was. I just knew that I would have the right feeling in my heart. Sounds corny, but I knew that I would feel different about something when the right thing came along. Yeah, that is ultimately what happened, but it just took a very sort of long and windy road to get there. But I did get there in the end.
And so do you want to share with us what you're doing now?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I don't want to sound very cloak and daggerish. But yeah, so I now work for a charity, a national charity that focuses on the social mobility of young people. So it ties very much into what I used to do before. And I work within the fundraising space within that charity, which is something that I haven't really done before. I've touched on it in a previous role, but it's it's extremely fascinating. It's a new field, really. So I'm learning. I'm learning very, very quickly and enjoying it. I've got lots of training courses that I'm going on, and I'm really lucky that I'm working with an excellent group of people who are experienced in what they do, and an excellent charity in terms of the cause and the purpose of the charity. So it's something that makes me wake up every day with some joy in my heart. I wake up and look forward to it. I wake up and think about what I'm going to do in the day and how that's going to play out. And, I feel that actually, whether it's a dream job or not, it ticks the boxes that I created. In most cases, I think, to tick all of the boxes that I was asking for. Ideally, I would like to be working on a beach with a laptop if I've got one, but it's not. I live in rural Gloucestershire. I'm afraid the beach is not an option. I travel down to Weston every day, but
That's what holidays are for.
I'm ticking most of my boxes. Yeah.
That's so fabulous. I'm so glad that you found something that gives you so much joy. And this is what I wish for everybody, that they just find something that makes getting up in the morning easier and much more fun.
And I think it's not going to fall into your lap. I don't think things work out how you expect them to. I think when I was looking at options, I wasn't necessarily looking at sort of traditional career options. On one instance, I rather randomly suggested that being a poster person would be a really good job for me, because it ticks a lot of my boxes. And that was, it's outside, it's fresh air, it's lots of exercise. I'd be walking, I'm an early riser, I would be out. And the idea of it I kind of got carried away on thinking, that sounds great. And when I actually thought about it, I was thinking, that's great in the summer months when it's warm and dry and light. And then I started to think in a little bit more detail about the day-to-day reality of what the job looked like. And actually, when it's cold in the winter and it's icy and snowy and dark and wet and rainy and you're cold. And I suddenly sort of thought, maybe that's not for me. And in fact,
Slightly less appealing.
it was a good lesson, because what that kind of got me into that space of thinking was actually really look at what that dream job is. And that would be something that I've seen that many job specs over the last 6 months and applied for that many different jobs, that I think my advice would be to anyone making that leap would be to say, really look at what your dream job, or what you think your dream job looks like day to day, 24/7 for 48 weeks of the year, because it may not actually be that job that you thought that you would be going for. It may look like something completely different. And that is something that I've had a lot of job applications submitted. I've had a lot of interviews the last 6 months, and it's something that I kind of came around to thinking about. So yeah, lots of advice to give anyone that's job hunting when you make that leap.
Yeah. What was your biggest challenge, would you say, between leaving your last job and now securing a new one?
What I would say I found, and we've kind of touched on this before, is that because I wasn't absolutely sure what I wanted to do, I just kind of felt that I would know. I was applying for all sorts of things, and I've got a lot of years of experience and transferable skills, specific skills, key skills, that perhaps I hadn't necessarily considered as valuable.
Yeah.
And they are extremely valuable. We know that. And now when I reflect on it, I had a huge amount to give to an employer, but I experienced something that I hadn't really come across before in recruitment, and that was ageism. And there is, without doubt, a real ageism issue, I think, in recruitment at the moment. I had some good advice from people. I mean, I took, obviously I didn't have a date of birth on my CV. I mean, I didn't mention my Zimmer frame. And then somebody said to me, take your education off. I don't have a degree. Okay, so it wasn't important that I had a degree. But obviously I've got, what I'm afraid I've got O and A levels, not GCSEs. But I took all dates off of my CV and essentially kind of removed education and took off quite a lot of my early life in my working life to reduce it down. But also, not that I've had hundreds of jobs, I haven't, far from it, but I have been working a long time.
Yeah.
And
do you mind, please say if you prefer not to, but do you want to share your age? Just so we've got it.
That's relevant. Yes. Not at all. I've been working for 40 years of my life. I'm reaching a milestone birthday this year. But, as you can see, I'm not yet in my coffin. I don't actually have a Zimmer frame, perfectly agile and fit and able to work. Brain is still completely active and fully functioning as a human and an adult. And really, I've got a lot to give, But I think that when employers have an indication that perhaps, there's some things that I would concede perhaps my skill set isn't as good as a younger equivalent, and I think that relates very much to technology, that younger people have evolved with technology and therefore it tends to be second nature to them, where with someone of my age it tends to be something that you've had to learn and isn't necessarily that easy to get to grips with in some cases. For example, when I was with my last company, and some fantastic processes in place, but I immediately was thrust into the world of using this application for this or this process for that, and technically and technology wise, I felt out of my depth. I hadn't really been involved in using so much technology in my day-to-day job before. All the my younger colleagues and my peers were perfectly competent and able to use that technology. So I do understand there's some differences, but certainly in the type of roles that I was applying for, and they were very varied, ageism exists out there, and that's quite difficult. And I think it took me a few knockbacks to kind of try to deal with it or understand and counter it, I guess.
Yeah.
And, you know, ultimately, there are still employers out there who acknowledge and recognise experience and transferable skills and other things that you might bring to the table as an older member of a team. So, you know, I did overcome it ultimately, but I do appreciate that actually they're sadly out there. You may have recruiters watching that would argue differently, but probably 85% of the recruiters that I spoke to, I felt had some level of ageism, you know, but ageist, shall we say, which is sad. It's sad, you know.
It is sad. Yeah.
I
Any ism
wouldn't,
is sad,
yeah,
really, isn't it?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I wouldn't want to put anybody off doing what they did. I've got a friend actually who, similar age to myself, who is a very successful in her career, very competent, very capable. She's run her own business before. And she works in a very high powered, pressured, stressed job, would want to do something differently, but has decided to stay where she is, based literally upon the experiences that she saw me going through and the difficulties that I had, which I find is a sad thing, because I feel that, you know, if you're that miserable in something that you do, then you need to move away from it. I appreciate that not everybody, you know, is in a position to be able to do that or feels confident enough to do that, to walk away from something, particularly when, you know, you're earning a reasonable salary and you're risking, you know, things financially. But I personally don't, you know, I've learned that I can't work if I'm unhappy. So
yeah, well, hopefully your friend will be inspired by you and your journey and where you've ended up now. Can we talk about the people that you had stroke have around you that sort of became part of your support network?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm very lucky, and I appreciate that not everybody is, but I've got a partner who's very supportive. I've got my family and I've got some good friends, and they're kind of my primary sounding boards as such. But I was really lucky that I also had a professional coach at the time who proved to be absolutely invaluable to me then and since, I would say, really helping me unravel my random thoughts and actually helping me to sort of focus more inwardly on than I might typically actually. I think I said to you, you know, I'm sort of a 100 miles per hour person, really rarely stopping to think too deeply about what it is that I'm doing. That sounds a bit erratic. I don't mean it like that, but I kind of, you know, I don't think too inwardly about anything. You know, I'm just not a sort of self sort of reflecting sort of person. But at this point in my life, it proved to be really helpful that I was seeing this professional coach, and I really needed that self-examination, that introspection of what I was doing. And to be honest, she was the fabulous facilitator, really, who helped me pick my way through the trees, essentially to find the woods, you know. And without her guidance, I'm not sure I would have got to the point that I got to when I arrived at it. It was really a fortunate coincidence, because I was actually undergoing professional coaching in my last job. She was great, because when I left there, we were able to move it away from that while I wasn't working. Poor woman turned into a bit of a personal sort of life coach as well. Yeah, I mean, it was probably through my support network that really sort of helped me and guide me and deal with it in actually what turned out to be quite a calm and measured way, which is quite unlike me. So well, normally that, but no, but yeah, it was very old.
On the other spectrum, did you have people that were like, Sarah, what the heck are you doing? You've got this great career. What, you know, why are you going through this like crazy change? I say crazy, they might not have called it that, but why are you going through this when you've got this very comfortable situation? And if you did, how did you counteract that? How did you?
I said it to myself that many times. Exactly, Sarah, what are you doing? Why have you done this? How stupid are you? And there's always that fear of making the wrong decision. And I think, the self-doubt sets in. And yes, there's always people saying, why did you do it? But do you know what? For every one person who said that, there was probably 5 that said, yeah, good for you, do it. Whether that says something about the sort of people that I'm surrounded with or not, I don't know. But I think that people, certainly before I did it, people were expressing concern about my level of enthusiasm. I mean, I'm always have been a very sort of enthusiastic, positive sort of person. I'm very outward in terms of my approach, and I've always worked in sales, so you need an element of of that to work in sales. But I think that people were saying to me more before it happened, you're not yourself. Why aren't yourself? You don't seem very happy, or you're not very buoyant. My coach, when I walked into a session, sometimes would say, what's the problem? What's the matter? And I say, well, why do you think something's the matter? Well, I can tell by your body language, I can tell by the look on your face, I can tell by the pallor of your skin. I think probably for me, when I'm feeling unhappy, it manifests itself quite physically. And I think that people saw that I wasn't happy, so therefore were actually happy for me when I decided to make, the decision to move out of what I was doing. And they could see, even when I was still unsure of what it was I wanted to do, before I found the place where I am now, people were still saying, well, you look so much better. Everything about you is so much better. How are you getting on? And I guess the only time I really felt quite down was when I was looking for work and was rejected, on occasion. But I do strongly believe that things happen for a reason, and I do very much rely on my instinct. And actually, the recruitment sort of whole cycle that I got into proved to be quite comical as it happened. And all I could do ultimately was just sort of look at it from a sort of positive perspective, and I was getting a lot of negativity, but it was actually quite positive, because a lot of jobs that I was applying for, you think to yourself, do you know, I could do this job with my eyes closed, my hands and feet tied together, and I would smash it out of the park, and you would be lucky to have me. Those words never come out of your mouth. And when somebody says to you, well, I don't think that your soft skills are very up to scratch, all you can do is just laugh to yourself, because you just think, well, actually, I don't think you're the right employer for me, actually. Right. Yeah. So you can walk away from it, and I think what it did, I don't think that it knocked me back at all. It just spurred me on, because it just provided me with more fuel to think, well, actually, you're wrong. Actually, I'm actually quite good. I'm actually very competent. And it just gives you so much more. It's a boot up the backside that perhaps you need for yourself. It lights the fire in your belly. I'm not naturally self-pitiful, but it certainly removes any capacity to be self-pitiful. And it focuses you very much on what you don't want to do and who you don't want to work for. And it gets that little list down. You're thinking, right, okay, so where am I going with this? Where do I want to go? And that focus of, I'll know it when I see it. When it hits me, I'll know it. It is quite sort of pertinent, really. So it's, there was always the naysayers, shall we say.
Yeah, but I love your positivity, though, because as much as you say, that you can't take it personally, and you can't let it get to you, I think a lot of people would, and they would curl up into a ball and go, oh my goodness, I'm useless, I'm no good at anything. And I love that you did the opposite. You went, well, I'm going to prove to you that I am, and it put fuel in your belly to prove them wrong. So
I think
I really love that. And if anybody's listening, then be like Sarah. Hashtag be more Sarah.
I think you've
think
got to just have that talk with yourself before you try to convince anybody else of it. You need to really believe that, and really understanding what you are good at, what your skills are, what you do well, and really, selling those. I don't necessarily mean to someone who's sat opposite you interviewing you, but I mean to yourself, really believing in what you're competent at and what you're capable of and what you've achieved. I haven't got to 40 years in a career by sitting on my backside doing nothing. I could write a list now, as long as my arm, about my skill set, and really genuinely believe it. And I think as long as you believe in yourself, you don't have to sit in front of somebody and reel them off and say, well, I can do this. Because actually it feels like you're trying to convince yourself sometimes when you're sat in front of that person.
very true. Yeah, very true. Oh, it's been so much fun talking to you. Before I let you go, because I know your time is really precious, and I'm really grateful that you've taken, I don't know how long we've had now, half an hour or so out of your day to speak to me. But before I let you go, please, can I ask you what your definition of success is nowadays?
Yeah, well, do you know what? It has never really changed, because for me, I've always been sales. I was never motivated by money as a salesperson, which a lot of my sales managers used to hate. My very first sales job, I worked in a massive call centre selling advertising space, and we used to have literally one of the boards up, and if you hit so many calls, a bell rang and there was a bottle of champagne. And I used to think, God, these people are just performing monkeys. I'm going to make my calls, and they'll be quality calls, and my success rate will be greater, perhaps. And I'm not just going to be picking up the phone like that. And I succeeded, and I've always done well in sales. But so money never really motivated me. I'm not denying that it's important, but it didn't motivate me per se. What motivates me is what I call CPH. It's not CPD. It's continual personal happiness. That's what motivates me. I realize that I need to be happy. I need to feel joy with my job. I need to really engage with what I'm doing and get full satisfaction from it. Because as soon as I don't, I'm unhappy. And I think, and everything, it's like a deflating balloon, isn't it? All of that, you feel like it's been sucked out of you. And I've really learned that, actually, even after 40 years of working, that is key to me. So for me, success for me is to be happy in what I do and get joy out of it. So it's as simple as that, really.
I love simple.
Yeah, cliche, but that's it. Nothing more, nothing less.
No, I absolutely love that. That is absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, I hope people who are listening are inspired by your story. I'm sure they will be.
Yeah, do it. Just do it.
Yeah, as Nike would say.
Yes, sorry, yeah.
Just do it. No, I really appreciate that. And anybody, if you've been listening to Sarah's story and you're thinking, actually, Sarah's right, life's too short, let's focus on being happy. And if I can help in any way, please have a look at yescareercoaching.com. I've got lots of free resources on there as well, and hopefully I can help you with your journey as well. Thanks again, Sarah.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.